In this video, I'm going to show you how to change a quadratic from another form to standard form. And standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So our end goal is for our equation to look like this. The first two examples are in vertex form, and we want to change them to standard form. And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to write my x minus 2 squared out as x minus 2 times x minus 2. So whenever you see a binomial is two terms, x is a term, minus 2 is a term, squared, you can't just square each one. You have to actually write it out twice and distribute, or as some people call this, FOIL. X times x is going to give me x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Now I need to take the negative 2 and do the same thing. That will give me negative 2x, and negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And then I'm going to drop down the plus 3 that was on the outside. The last step is to combine like terms. Negative 2x and negative 2x are like terms because they both have an x. 4 and 3 are like terms because they're both constants. X squared just gets dropped down. Now I have negative 4x combined and 7 when I combine my constants. And now I'm in standard form. Number 2 is similar. I am going to write this out as negative 2 times x plus 1 times x plus 1 because something squared means multiplied by itself. You have two choices here. You could either go ahead and distribute the negative 2 into the first set of parentheses, but I like to leave mine on the outside and just distribute my x plus 1s first. But either way, you'll end up with the same answer. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is 1x. 1 times x is 1x. And 1 times 1 is 1. Now, I put these in parentheses because I knew that negative 2 was still hanging out outside and it's multiplying. So I'm going to multiply or distribute it into everything that's on the inside. Negative 2 times x squared is negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times 1x is negative 2x. Negative 2x times 1x again. Negative 2 times 1x is negative 2x. And then negative 2 times 1 is negative 2, and then I'm going to combine like terms. Some people like to combine like terms before they distribute the outside, like you could have combined like terms and then distributed the negative 2. I just like to go ahead and combine at the very end. So I have a negative 2x and a negative 2x, which is going to leave me with negative 2x squared minus 4x minus 2. Now, with either of these examples or any example, when you're changing forms, you're just creating an equivalent form of the same quadratic. So you could check this by graphing it in a handheld graphing calculator or Desmos. And the way you check it is to go to Desmos and type in the original problem. And then I'm going to type in what my answer was. I think this was minus 2. And so I can see that my original problem now graphed in green, and my new problem or new form is graphed in purple, and I can see that these fully overlap, which means they're the same quadratic, which means I did it correctly. I just changed them into a different format. All right, sometimes you might need to go from factored form to standard form. So my third example here is in factored form, and I'm going to distribute. So I have 3x times x, which is 3x squared. And then I have 3x times 7, which is 21x. Now I have to take the negative 2 and do the same thing. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. Lastly, I'm going to combine my like terms. So I have y is equal to 3x squared plus 19x minus 14. Just like the last problem, you could check this one using Desmos and making sure that your factored form matches up with your standard form. All right, the last thing I want to just bring to your attention is that sometimes you might be starting in some random form. So let's say I gave you an example. Let's say I just made up, we'll call this random form. Let's say you end up with like, I don't know, y minus 3x plus 4 equals x squared. And that's not in standard form. So everything would need to go to the right besides y. So I'm going to add 3x and subtract 4, add 3x and subtract 4. I'm moving them to the other side by changing their signs. They cannot be combined with each other because you have an x squared term, a 3x term, and a negative 4 term. So I would just write them down by the x squared in the correct form. So if you cross the equal sign, you change their signs. And so sometimes it's just a matter of rearranging. And that is how you go from some random form, factored form, or vertex form to standard form.